Hi everyone, Emily here from Emily Reads, and today I have for you 50 books to read before I turn 50. So, first, a couple of things. One, before I even get into the whole video, I just want to let you know I have my windows open. It is a beautiful fall day, and I live by a busy street, so you might hear some cars, you might hear that. I also sometimes have noisy neighbors, so you might hear that as well. And kids might be outside playing soon, so you might hear that as well. So just want to warn you of that. Two, it is October, and I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't say anything about this. So I'm currently wearing my shirt for breast cancer awareness. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. It has impacted my life. I have a family member who successfully battled breast cancer. They were able to detect it early. The mammogram showed the tumor. It was so small that even a breast self-exam, which you should do monthly, but the tumor was so small that even a breast self-exam would not have picked it up. So fortunately, that family member gets her mammogram done, or got her mammogram done on a yearly basis. They were able to detect it early. A complete mastectomy. It was had a very low chance of recurrence rate, and so and it was a hormone receptive breast cancer. So more than 5 years later, they are cancer free. Because my mother also passed away from ovarian cancer, and then I have a immediate family member with breast cancer, I did get genetic screening from my geneticist. Fortunately, I do not have any genetic markers that indicate that I would be a higher risk for ovarian or breast cancer. However, because of family history and other medical factors, I am at a 20.12% increased risk for breast cancer. And that 0.12% puts me over the 20% mark, which means that I get screened twice a year. So I get a mammogram, and then 6 months later, I get an MRI or an ultrasound. For me, it's an ultrasound. We have closed MRI machines where I live, and it just doesn't work for me to do closed MRI. So please know your risks and get your yearly screenings, especially women if you are over 40 years of age. And something that was shocking to me that the geneticist told me was 1 in 2 men will have cancer in their lifetime. 1 in 3 women will have cancer in their lifetime, which is an outrageously high number, in my opinion, on both statistics. So please know your signs and symptoms, know your body, be an advocate at the doctor's office, and get your yearly screenings. Without further ado, so I initially hesitated to do 50 for 50. One, because I've become quite the mood reader of this last couple of months. And two, I was like, oh, yet another challenge. But I was like, let's just put books that I'm already trying to fit in for other challenges anyway, and that are high priority anyway. So I will be able to make the goal of 50 before 50. In addition, I did try to put a couple of books on there that, one, I just needed it's a shorter book and I needed something shorter, or two, like it's been on my TBR for years and I just have not picked it up. So let me put it on there. Some of the books are first in a series or second in a series that I've already started. And my intent in putting this on my 50 before 50 is that I will also then hopefully finish that series. Although one is a really long series, so I am not hopeful that I will finish it before 50 because it's 14 books and I need to read book 3. But at any rate, here we go. Let's get started. Also, I need to add one other side note. I don't know how to edit. And I film on my phone. So you might see me scrambling. This is just, you're going to just get the real thing. I've got a chair with like 2 stacks that are super high, and then I have 2 stacks of books next to me on my sofa. And so I might be like scrambling to adjust things throughout the video. I'm going to just apologize right now, but here we go. Without further ado, let's dive in. So number 1, Dead Romantics, The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. I loved, adored a novel story earlier, or not a novel story, The 7-Year Slip. Loved it. A novel story, I was like, meh, it was okay. A disappointment, but I heard that this was really good. And so I put this on my 50 before 50 because I don't want to forget about reading this book. And also, I'm going to need something shorter and a quicker paced read when you look at all my other books. So, Dead Romantics. Number 2, The Forgotten Garden by Kate Morton. I really liked Clockmaker's Daughter. I really want to read more by her. This is also on my list for a couple of other challenges that I was hoping to finish this year. Won't happen. But here we are, The Forgotten Garden by Kate Morton. Also, I'm not going to say too much about the books because sake of time. Stack, stay there. Number 3, The Sword of Kaigen by Emma Wong. I don't feel like this requires any explanation other than I've heard this is just so phenomenally good, and so therefore I need to read it. Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. This has been on my TBR for years, and I've yet to pick it up, so I need to prioritize it. Maybe this winter. Fingers crossed. I say that every winter. Boy. A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. I've had this book for a few years. Actually, I've had the whole trilogy for a few years, and I just need to settle down and read it. The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. Again, I also had this when it came out in paperback. Faithful and the Fallen, I DNF'd after Valor. Not gonna lie, but I've heard really good things about this series, so maybe this one will work out better for me. So I just need to read this book and then decide, do I want to continue on the series or not? Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. Good gravy. This has been on my TBR for I don't know how long, but I have all of the books in the series except for one. I've managed to acquire them, used throughout the years, and so now it's just time to buckle down and read it. My Antonia by Willa Cather. I was an English education major, and I feel like I should have read this book, but I have not. So, The Frozen... Oh! That was a whole big slide of pile of books. Okay. I gotta talk through this one quickly. The Frozen River by Ariel Lawn. I've heard phenomenal things on it, and so therefore I want to read it. Whew. Oh, that almost came tumbling down. The Titan Curse by Rick Riordan. This is book 3 in Percy Jackson and the Olympian series. I read book 1 and 2 over the summer, and I just need to keep plugging away at this series. I just want to finish it, especially because I have more of his books to read. Morning Star by Pierce Brown. I'm going to be one of the rare people that I loved Red Rising. Golden Sun I thought was okay. It wasn't great. The politics really irritated me, not gonna lie. And confused me. So I need to put this on my 50 before 50 so that way I can just finish the series. Hopefully this is better. I want more Severo and Ragnar. Okay, not gonna lie. Cathedral of the Sea. I've had this on my TBR for a couple of years now. I bought this because it was highly lauded at the first BookTube Besties virtual retreat, and it just has been sitting staring at me on my TBR shelf. And it's also a translated work from Spain, so it will hit like reading around the world. Dragon Reborn by Robert Jordan. Book 3 in Wheel of Time. I really liked book 1 and 2. I need to make more progress, and it's been sitting. I've been staring at it for a year and a half now. I need to prioritize this. Ooh, maybe I need to start building my November TBR. David Copperfield. The reason why I need to read David Copperfield, one, it's part of the hardest reading challenge that you'll ever do. It will fulfill a prompt for that. I don't think I'll finish that challenge before July 7th, but we're going to try. And so that's why I decided to put it on my 50 before 50, especially because, and I know you don't have to read David Copperfield in order to read this book, but I thought, you know what? Demon Copperhead is a modern retelling of David Copperfield set in Appalachia. So why not read it? And I've read Prodigal Summer by Barbara Kingsolver, and I loved her writing. It's really the only book that I got through by her, and I just want to read this. I also know it won the Pulitzer Prize, so hence I want to read it. Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. I've heard wonderful things about this book, and it also made this list because I know me. I know I would not prioritize literary fiction over like fantasy or romantasy or romance novels, so that's why I put it on the list, and it's also shorter. And I needed some shorter books. And I've heard really good things about it. Speaking of Ann Patchett, I also need to read Bel Canto. I had this book years ago, and I was like, I'm never, like 15 years ago, I had this book. Maybe, when was this written? I don't know. When did it come out? Well, anyway, I've had this on my TBR years and years ago, and then I got rid of it. And then I realized, no, I really probably should read it, because I've heard really good things about it. So, Bel Canto. East of Eden by John Steinbeck. This is a retelling of the Cain and Abel story. Now, I loved Of Mice and Men, but one book that I read when I was in junior high was The Pearl, and we were required to read it, and I absolutely hated it. I thought it was awful, and it made me never want to read a John Steinbeck book again. But I wanted to read Of Mice and Men before the movie version with George Clooney, or not George Clooney. Oh, what's his face? John Malkovich and the guy who played Lieutenant Dan, that for some reason is completely escaping me. I could totally picture him, but Lieutenant Dan. So John Malkovich and Lieutenant Dan. So I wanted to read Of Mice and Men before I saw the movie, and I loved it. So I've heard really good things about East of Eden. I remember growing up, this movie used to be on the TV all the time. I think like James Dean and Jane Seymour were in it. I'm not sure, but I remember watching it, seeing it on TV all the time. 11/22/63 by Stephen King. This also fits some reading challenges. I actually need to start reading it next month because it fits the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do. Book set in the fall. I've heard really good things about it, so there we go. The Mysterious Affair at the Styles by Agatha Christie. I really like the few books that I've read by her, and I need to read more. I like mysteries, and this is her first Hercule Poirot. So here we go. The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simone Jimenez. People who have read this absolutely adore this book. So, I have the complete works of Arthur Conan Doyle, or the complete Sherlock Holmes, I should say. I'm not ambitious enough to say I'm going to read the complete Sherlock Holmes, but I do want to read at least A Study in Scarlet. My father, who passed away 12 years ago, actually yesterday, he was part of a Shakespeare discussion group. Or not Shakespeare, he was part of a Shakespeare discussion group, but we're talking about Sherlock Holmes. He was part of a Sherlock Holmes discussion group. And I remember once I said, you know what, I really want to read some Sherlock Holmes. And he went and he gave me this book, and then it's the complete Sherlock Holmes are in, it's a 2-volume set that I have, and he gave them to me off of his shelf. And my dad does not give books of his own to people. Like, he just doesn't. But he gave them to me. He gave me a copy also of Ulysses, which was his favorite novel. But I have a lot of big chunky books on my 50 before 50, and I said I don't want a stream of consciousness book on there and derail it, so let's put Sherlock Holmes on there. The Tropic of Serpents by Marie Brennan. I've had the entire series for a little bit now, and I read book 1 and I have not progressed further, and I really liked book 1 and I need to keep reading. So, plus I also wanted a shorter book. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Noral by Susanna Clarke. Again, I've heard wonderful things about this book, and it fits some reading challenges, and I just need to buckle down and read it. Chunky book. Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick. I've heard phenomenal things about this series, and I have the entire series. I just now need to read it. City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. I enjoyed The Adventures of Mina al-Sarafi, but it wasn't great. It was a good story. It was enough for me to go, okay, I would read the next book, but I'm not sure if I would own it. But I've heard phenomenal things about this trilogy, and I have all of the books in the trilogy, so I need to buckle down and read it. Okay, now here's where things get dicey, because I got my chair. Okay. Guns of the Dawn by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I've heard so many good things about Adrian Tchaikovsky, and so many good things about this book, and it also doesn't hurt. The main character's name is Emily. Children of Time, also by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Also heard phenomenal things about this book. Also have had this since the first ever virtual, or BookTube Bestie's virtual reading retreat. So I need to prioritize this. This one is because I got my hairdresser hooked onto the other series that I read earlier this year by her. And my hairdresser is now outpacing me, and she's already on book 5 of this series, and a coworker has already read this book. And I need to get on the train and become dedicated to reading this book. Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. Yes, I know. I like me some romantasy. The Berry Pickers by Amanda Peters. I've heard really good things about this. Look how gorgeous this cover is. And it's about Indigenous people in America. And I've heard wonderful things about it, and I do want to read it. I just don't prioritize literary fiction, so I need to prioritize it. And also, it's a shorter book, so it will help me meet my 50 before 50 goals. Like, I had some other books on there, and I was like, oh, that's too long. I have so many long books that I had to prioritize. Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. I have heard phenomenal things about this book. It's a shorter book, so that will help. And also, it's a book that I am not, as of right now, if I didn't have the 50 before 50, I would not prioritize this. So that's why I'm putting this on my 50 before 50. Shogun by James Clavell. Yes, this is only part 1. I purposely bought the book version that's divided into part 1 and part 2. I only have part 1 on purpose because I was like, what if I don't like it? But I wanted the version that splits it because it's such a long book, and I wanted easier reading for that. Lincoln and the Bardo by George Saunders. So I like the podcast What Should I Read Next by Anne Vogel. And I was listening to the back episodes before listening to the more current ones. And everyone on the back episodes were talking about this book. And they just keep talking about it, keep talking about how great this book is. So It got me intrigued. It's also a shorter one. The Night and Gale by Kristen Hanna. Everybody has raved about her. I've yet to read a book by her, and most people have said this is a good place to start. Sorry, I just cringed there for a minute because I was looking at one of my piles of books, and I'm like, ooh, that looks like it's going to totter over. So, My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. I've heard wonderful things about this series, and it would fulfill a couple of reading challenges for me. As a translator work from Italy, I just want to read outside of my comfort zone. So, how do I want to do this so I don't knock over books? Middlemarch by George Eliot. I've been wanting to read this book ever since the PBS miniseries came out. So that would have been like more than 20 years. So that's a long time. So I need to prioritize it. And plus, also, can I just say, I love the Penguin Classics this edition. So hopefully I can switch out some of my books for that edition. The Stand by Stephen King. I also have heard phenomenal things about this book. And I know that I would not pick up this book if it weren't on my 50 before 50. I don't know who that dude is. He's creepy. Yeah, so let's read that. North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. I love, again, the PBS miniseries or the BBC miniseries, and think it's absolutely adorable. I think this would be a wonderful piece of Victorian literature. I can easily read this during Victober. I keep meaning to do that every year, and it has not happened. I'm reading Bram Stoker right now. Maybe next year I'll read this during Victober. Okay, here's where things get interesting. Go Gadget Arms. Okay. Shamans Crossing by Robin Hobb. If you know me and you have been watching my channel, you know that I love Robin Hobb. I tried reading this last summer, and then I fell apart. You can see I started it, and then I fell apart with it. So I need to prioritize it. Fahrenheit 451. Again, heard phenomenal things about it. It's about book banning, and book burning and book banning. I need to read it. The Weird Sisters by Terry Pratchett. I've been told by more than one person that I need to read Terry Pratchett. I need to read Discworld, and I am hesitant. Not going to lie. So if I didn't put this on my 50 before 50, I don't know if I would pick it up, even though I have a ton of them that I got dirt cheap at a used book sale. Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. Now, here's the deal. I have read Game of Thrones already. I've read actually the first 3 books in Song of Ice and Fire. But I have not finished the series. Yes, do I think that George R.R. Martin will finish the series before he dies? Who knows? Who knows? But I really enjoyed it, and I know that it's good, and I need to finish it. I read this so long ago, though. When did I read it? I read it when the show first came out. So it was so long ago. So I need to go back and reread. Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. Do I think that he will finish the series? Probably not. But I've heard so many good things about it from people that say it doesn't matter. Still read it. So here we are. Lady Susan, the Watson Sanditon by Jane Austen. I've read 1, maybe 2 of these, but I didn't finish this. And I've had this book for years and years and years. In fact, I might see if I can switch out this edition, because it's beginning to like yellow. And as I'm getting older, that really affects how I read things. So, older eyes. Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. I'm not gonna lie, I've been putting off reading this book forever. I've seen a couple of versions of the movie of this. I'm not gonna lie, I don't like Fanny Price. I think she's wishy-washy and annoying. So who knows? Like, at least in how they've been portrayed and on film. So who knows? Maybe the book version will be better. I don't know. Fingers crossed. Grace of Kings by Ken Leah. I have heard nothing but praise for the Dandelion Dynasty, so I need to prioritize it. Whew. 4 more books to go. We got this. The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. I have never read this. In fact, years ago, when the movies came out in the theater, I started reading it, and I DNF'd when we got to Tom Bombadil because he annoyed the snot out of me. Like, he was just like, why was he in there? I don't know. I know people in the comments are going to explain why he's in there. I also was like, it were taking forever to leave the Shire. This is just annoying. Now, mind you, I had never read really much of fantasy before, and I didn't realize, like, quest fantasies are slow. Like, I didn't know that that's just the point of the genre. We're enjoying the journey. And I just didn't know that. So, and it's also intimidating to me, just the sheer scope and the appendix. Those things intimidate me. So, why I've kind of hesitated toward reading this, but I like fantasy, and so I feel like I'm a bad fantasy fan if I don't at least try to read this, right? Okay, the next book is actually not the book that's on my 50 before 50, because the next book will stands in and represents the next book. You'll see what I mean. So, I have Rhythm of War. I'm hoping to read this probably in December, simply because if I read 11/22/63 in November, there's no way I could read this in November too. But this is a stand-in for Wind and Truth, which I have pre-ordered, and I do plan on reading. So, and so I want Wind and Truth on there, because then it's like, I'm done with Stormlight Archive. War and Peace by Tolstoy. I actually have a coworker who read it and loved it. Like, I watch younger booktubers that are like, I love this thing. It's the best book. It's wonderful. I'm like, oh, yeah, I should read it. It's so intimidating. Like, it's so intimidating. Just the sheer number of characters that are in this book is very intimidating. That thought. But I managed to read Count of Monte Cristo. So, we're going to try tackling this. Maybe over the summer. I don't know when. And finally, the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. This has been on my TBR forever, and I just need to buckle down and read it. So, that was a lot. And now it's going to be fun trying to get out of my little space on the sofa, because I have books all around me. But what are your thoughts? What do you think I should prioritize? Is there any book on here that you're like, Emily, you can easily skip over that book? Just move on with your life. And pick a different book on your list. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, please like, subscribe, hit the notification button. It really means a lot for me that you're here and watching, and it helps grow my channel. Thank you so much. Bye.